Stop scrolling for just a second. I want to ask you a question, and I need you to be honest with yourself. When was the last time you truly bet on yourself? Not just hoped for something, not just wished on a star. I mean, when was the last time you looked at a situation that was absolutely stacked against you, where logic, your friends, your family, and maybe even your own brain told you it was impossible, and you said, "I'm going to do it anyway"? If you're like most of us, that answer is probably never, or a long time ago. And I get it. It's scary. The fear of failure, of looking stupid, of losing it all, it's paralyzing. But here's the thing. On the other side of that fear is the life you actually want. And the story I'm about to tell you is about a man who had every single reason to quit. He had the universe itself telling him to give up, and he didn't. By the end of this video, I want you to understand that your circumstances do not define your destiny. Your response to them does. So, if you're ready to stop making excuses and start making moves, if you're ready to understand the secret ingredient that separates those who dream from those who achieve, then watch until the very end. Because this isn't just a story, it's a blueprint. Let's begin. Our story starts not in a boardroom or a big city, but in a small, forgotten town called Millbrook. It was the kind of place where dreams went to retire, not to start. The main street had more empty storefronts than open businesses, and the local mill, once the heart of the town, stood silent and rusting by the river. And in this town lived a young man named Elias Thorne. Elias was 24 years old, but he carried himself like he was 60. His shoulders were permanently hunched, not from hard labor, but from the weight of disappointment. He lived in a cramped apartment above a closed-down bakery, and every morning he woke up to the smell of dust and regret. His days followed a soul-crushing routine. He worked the night shift at a 24-hour gas station on the edge of town, watching the headlights of cars pass by, cars that were always going somewhere else, anywhere else. By day, he slept, and in the brief hours between, he sat by his window, staring at the hills surrounding the valley, wondering what lay on the other side. You see, Elias had a dream. It was a small dream, really, nothing grandiose. He wanted to build things, not with code or on paper, but with his hands. Wood, metal, stone. He wanted to be a craftsman, a creator. His grandfather had been a carpenter, and as a boy, Elias would spend hours in his workshop, mesmerized by the way rough planks of wood could be transformed into something beautiful and useful. But his grandfather died when Elias was 12. The tools were sold to pay off debts, and the dream was packed away in a dusty box buried deep in his heart. Now, at 24, Elias was broke, single, and living paycheck to non-existent paycheck. His car was a 20-year-old sedan with a dented door and a check engine light that had been on for so long it felt like a part of the dashboard. He hadn't spoken to his father in years, a man who had told him, on the day Elias mentioned wanting to go to a trade school for woodworking, "Stop living in a fantasy world. People like us don't get to be artists. We work, we survive. Get a real job." So Elias survived. He stocked shelves, he pumped gas, he wiped down counters. And every night, as he watched those cars disappear over the horizon, a small, quiet voice inside him would whisper, "Is this it? Is this all there is?" Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Tuesday. A storm was rolling over the valley, the kind of thunderstorm that rattles windows and makes the power flicker. Elias was alone at the gas station, reading a tattered paperback he'd found in the break room. The rain was coming down in sheets, hammering against the glass. A truck pulled up to the pump, an old, beat-up pickup truck, its bed covered with a tarp. A man got out, drenched immediately, and started filling his tank. Elias watched him absently. The man finished, and instead of getting back in his truck, he walked toward the convenience store, shaking water off his jacket like a dog. The bell above the door jingled. The man stepped inside, bringing a gust of wind and rain with him. He was older, maybe 60, with a gray beard and eyes that crinkled when he smiled. He bought a black coffee and a pack of gum. As he paid, he looked at Elias. Really looked at him. "Tough night to be working," the man said, his voice rough like gravel. Elias shrugged. "Someone's got to do it." The man nodded, took a sip of his coffee, and then his eyes fell on the paperback Elias had been reading. It was a book on furniture design, something Elias had picked up at a thrift store for 50 cents. He was too embarrassed to read it at home, so he kept it at work. The man's eyes lit up. "You're into that?" he asked, pointing at the book. Elias felt a flush of embarrassment. "It's just something to pass the time." The man studied him for a long moment. "You know," he said slowly, "I had a shop once, outside of town, built custom furniture, had to shut it down 5 years ago. The economy, you know, nobody wants to pay for quality anymore. They want cheap, flat-backed stuff from a box." Elias's heart skipped a beat. A real craftsman, standing right in front of him. "I'm Elias," he said, surprising himself. "Name's Frank," the man replied. He looked at Elias again with those crinkly eyes. "You got the look, kid, the look of someone who's got a fire inside them but doesn't know how to light it. I've seen it 100 times." He finished his coffee in one long gulp. "Tell you what, the old shop is still there, down by the old mill road, full of dust and spider webs now, but the tools are still there. My wife, God rest her soul, she never let me sell them." He paused, looking out at the rain. "You want to learn? Really learn? You come by tomorrow, 10 in the morning. We'll see if you're serious." And just like that, he was gone. The bell jingled, the door swung shut, and the rain swallowed his truck as he drove away. Elias stood there, his heart pounding. For the first time in years, something felt possible. The next morning, he didn't sleep after his shift. He drove straight to the old mill road. It took him 20 minutes to find the place, a ramshackle building with a faded sign that read Frank's Custom Woodworks. The windows were grimy, the porch sagged, but as he approached, he heard the sound of a saw. Frank was already there. He was clearing away cobwebs, his overalls covered in dust. He looked up as Elias entered and just nodded. "Ned, you came. Grab a broom." And so it began. For the next 6 months, Elias lived 2 lives. By night, he was the listless gas station attendant. By day, he was an apprentice. Frank was a hard teacher, gruff, demanding, never satisfied. He would make Elias sand the same piece of wood for hours until it was smooth as glass. He would critique his joints, his measurements, his choice of grain. "Wood is alive," Frank would say. "It has a voice. Your job is not to impose your will on it. Your job is to listen and help it become what it wants to be." Elias absorbed it all like a sponge. For the first time in his life, he felt alive. His hands, once idle, were now calloused and skilled. His mind, once dulled by routine, was now sharp and focused. He was learning a language, the language of creation. But life, as it always does, had other plans. One morning, Elias arrived at the shop to find the door unlocked and Frank sitting in his old chair, looking pale and tired. On the table in front of him was a pile of papers. "Close the door, son," Frank said quietly. "We need to talk." Elias's stomach dropped. Frank gestured to the papers. "I've been sick for a while. Didn't want to tell you. Didn't want it to become an excuse." He took a shaky breath. "It's bad. Pancreatic. The doctors give me a few months, maybe less." Elias felt the world tilt. "Frank, no, listen to me," Frank said, his voice suddenly sharp, the old fire returning. "I didn't bring you here to make you sad. I brought you here because I've been watching you. You've got the gift. More than talent, you've got the hunger. That's something I can't teach." He pushed the pile of papers toward Elias. "This is the deed to the shop, and the title to the tools. It's yours." Elias stared at him, speechless. "I can't take this. This is everything you have." "It's everything I had asterisk," Frank corrected him. "Now it's everything you have. There's one condition." "Anything?" Frank leaned forward, his eyes burning with intensity. "Build something. Not for money, not for a client. Build something for yourself. Something that matters, something that says I was here. Promise me." Tears welled in Elias's eyes. "I promise, Frank, I promise." Frank died 3 weeks later. Elias was at his bedside. His last words were, "Don't let the dust settle, kid." The funeral was small. Elias was the youngest person there by 40 years. Afterward, he went back to the shop and sat in the silence, surrounded by the ghosts of sawdust and Frank's laughter. The weight of the gift pressed down on him. He was alone again, but this time he had a purpose. Or did he? Reality, as it always does, came knocking. The gas station job barely paid his rent. Now he had a shop to maintain, property taxes, electricity, insurance. The bills started piling up. He tried to take on small jobs, fixing a broken chair, building a shelf, but in Millbrook, no one had money to spend on custom woodwork. They bought their furniture at the big box store in the next town over. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The shop, once alive with possibility, began to gather dust again. Elias would sit in Frank's old chair, staring at the tools, listening to the silence. The old doubts crept back in, louder than ever. Your father was right. People like us don't get to be artists. You're a gas station attendant. That's who you are. That's who you'll always be. He stopped going to the shop. It was too painful. He threw himself back into his night shifts, working double shifts, triple shifts, trying to drown out the voice of his dream with exhaustion. He stopped eating well, stopped sleeping. He became a ghost, haunting the gas station, watching the cars go by. One night, about a year after Frank died, Elias was working the late shift. A young woman came in, probably in her early 20s. She was crying. Elias, numbed by his own misery, barely looked up. She bought a bottle of water and stood by the window, staring out at the rain. After a long moment, she turned to him. "Do you ever feel like you're invisible?" she asked, her voice trembling. Elias looked at her, really looked. He saw the pain in her eyes, the loneliness. It was a mirror. "Again," he said softly. "I do." She managed a weak smile. "My grandmother used to say that everyone leaves a mark on the world, even if no one sees it, even if it's just a scratch on a tree or a dent in a table. You were here. You mattered." She wiped her eyes. "I'm trying to believe that." She left, and Elias stood there, frozen. Build something that says, "I was here." Frank's words, the promise. Suddenly, it was like a dam broke inside him. All the grief, all the fear, all the self-pity came rushing out. He slumped against the counter and wept. He wept for Frank. He wept for his lost years. He wept for the young woman and for everyone who felt invisible. And when the tears were done, something else remained. Something hard and bright and unbreakable. Determination. He didn't go home that morning. He drove straight to the shop. The door was stiff, the air musty. He threw open the windows and let the sunlight pour in. He picked up a broom and started sweeping. Then he dusted every tool, every surface, every shelf. When the shop was clean, he stood in the middle of the floor and looked around. What would he build? What would say Elias Thorne was here? He thought of the young woman. He thought of Frank. He thought of his grandfather. He thought of all the invisible people, living their quiet lives, leaving their quiet marks. And he knew he would build a table, not just any table, a table big enough for a family. A table with curves like a river, with a surface smooth as glass, with legs strong enough to last 100 years. A table where people would gather and laugh and cry and live. A table that would witness life. He worked for 6 months. Every moment he wasn't at the gas station, he was in the shop. He didn't sleep much. He didn't eat much. He just worked. He chose a massive slab of black walnut with a grain that swirled like a galaxy. He shaped the legs by hand, carving them into gentle curves. He inlaid a small piece of cherry wood into the center, a tiny, almost hidden heart, a tribute to Frank. He poured every ounce of his pain, his hope, his love into that table. He talked to Frank while he worked. He asked his grandfather for guidance. He whispered apologies to his younger self for taking so long to believe. And finally, it was done. It was the most beautiful thing Elias had ever seen. It wasn't just a piece of furniture. It was a testament. It was a promise kept. He didn't know what to do with it. He couldn't sell it, it was never meant to be sold, so he just left it in the shop, covered with a cloth like a sleeping giant. A few weeks later, a woman walked into the gas station. It was the same woman from that rainy night. She looked different now, brighter, stronger. She recognized him. "Hey," she said, "you're still here." He smiled. "So are you." She nodded. "I took your advice." "My advice?" "Ye invisible thing." "I decided to stop waiting to be seen. I started a little bakery. It's nothing fancy, just selling bread at the farmer's market. But people are buying it. They're smiling." She laughed. "It's crazy. I feel like I exist." Elias felt a warmth spread through his chest. "That's not crazy, that's everything." On impulse, he said, "I have something I want to show you, something I built. It's for people like us." She looked curious. "Okay." He took her to the shop. He led her to the table and pulled off the cloth. She gasped. Her hand reached out, trembling, and touched the surface. This is incredible," she whispered. "Who is it for?" Elias thought about it. Really thought about it. "I don't know yet, but I think it's for everyone. For anyone who needs a place to belong." She looked at him, her eyes shining. "My grandmother would have loved this." Elias smiled. "Then it's for her, too." That was the beginning. The woman, whose name was Clara, told everyone about the table. People came to see it. They marveled at it. They asked Elias to build things for them. A bookshelf for a new mother, a crib for a baby, a rocking chair for an old man who missed his wife. Word spread beyond Millbrook. A reporter from the city came and wrote an article, "The Carpenter Who Built a Promise." Orders started pouring in. Elias quit the gas station. He hired 2 assistants, then 3. The shop expanded. He started teaching classes, passing on what Frank had taught him. Years passed. Elias became known as one of the finest woodworkers in the region. But success didn't change him. Every morning, before he started work, he would go to that first table, still sitting in the corner of the shop, and he would run his hand over its surface. He would remember Frank. He would remember the young woman crying in a gas station. He would remember the promise. And he would whisper, "I was here." So, what's the point of this story? The point is that Elias had every excuse to fail. He was poor. He was alone. He had no connections, no money, no formal training. The world had told him over and over that he didn't matter. But he built a table. He took his pain, his grief, his fear, and he transformed it into something beautiful. He didn't wait for permission. He didn't wait for the perfect moment. He just started. And he kept going. That young woman in the gas station, she was you. She was me. She was every person who has ever felt invisible, insignificant, stuck. And Elias? He was just a guy who decided that his response to the world would be creation, not complaint, action, not apathy. You have something inside you, a gift, a dream, a table waiting to be built. It might not be made of wood. It might be a song, a business, a family, a garden, a kindness. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that you build it. The world will try to convince you that you don't matter. Don't listen. Build your table. Leave your mark. Say, "I was here." If this story touched you, if it sparked something inside you, do me a favor. Hit that like button. It tells the algorithm that this message matters, that stories of hope and resilience need to be seen. And share this video with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's feeling stuck, invisible, or ready to give up. You might be the Frank in their life. You might be the one who hands them the tool and says, "Let's see if you're serious." And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, because every week we tell stories like this, stories that remind you that the human spirit is capable of incredible things. The dust is settling on your dreams. Don't let it. Get up, pick up your tool, and start building. I'll see you in the next video.